It's been about a week since Pantheon has dropped, and I've done my fair share of runs, both with my day one raid team and doing helps on my Twitch stream. I figured now I can finally put out a solid piece regarding how I feel about the activity and what I like and don't like about it. Also, who it's actually for. Now, I do know a few of y'all have come from the DCP stream where I was with them and just talking about what I thought about Pantheon. First off, welcome. I appreciate you. It really means a lot. First off, let's talk about the good things. The activity is basically a boss rush. What a boss rush is an activity where you would go from boss to boss trying to defeat them as quickly as possible. Now, this is something that I've experienced as I've done this same kind of boss rush thing in other games such as Hollow Knight, Elden Ring, and probably most famously, the Borderlands series. In these games, my main focus was on either speed of the kills and the run overall, what weapons and characters and loadouts I would use, and how I would defeat them, like, poison only or melee only. These were all player-driven ways to challenge myself in fun and unique ways, while also freshening up older content that I already played and knew. In Destiny, that same premise has definitely been applied here. Having a timer for platinum in which if you defeat the boss in the allotted time will grant you extra rewards is nice. I was curious how they were going to move the player from location to location and then, location. I thought they were going to use a similar feature to Hollow Knight where the bosses were in their own location and arena with a new look of the sandbox. I also thought, like they in Borderlands, you were just going to have to run and run and run to each location, but they didn't do that either. I didn't think they would add a flag with a teleport mechanic to just take you to the next location. All in all, I don't mind it. I did have a lot of fan theories on how they were going to do this, and while they were all more intricate and insane than this, I have no one to blame but myself as they never told us what to expect. I also need to just blame myself for expecting Pantheon to focus on, or at least include, raid bosses that were previously in the game and were removed and added to the DCV. If you've watched my stream in the last couple weeks, you've seen me spend a lot of time talking about Pantheon as we led up to it. I pictured this being a really cool way for them to bring back the raid bosses like Insurrection Prime from Scourge of the Past or Argos from Eater of Worlds without needing to bring back the entire raids. At this point, especially leading up to Final Shape, we're getting back almost all of the DCV content with the exception of those raids. So it would have been a nice surprise. That being said, we are getting arguably the best raid encounters from each raid all merged into one activity, and I think that is a great thing. What does bother me about this activity is the power level penalty. The initial week we see players being capped at a -5 below the power activity. 5 doesn't seem like a lot, but based on the completion time and player feedback that has been given to me, it seems that 5 power alone has made this activity the wild west and insanely hard, especially on LFG. Now, also including Fireteam Finder, I don't agree with that sentiment. Most do, and for a good reason. The average raid completion, as far as what we know of this activity currently, is about 2 hours. While 2 hours isn't an insane amount, there was a person who was in this raid for 17 hours, and who knows how many players left and joined before they completed it. This is all with the activity having 2 fantastic buffs, Void and Strand Surges, to deal even more damage when you use those elements, and a new one called Class Warfare, which gives you an additional damage bonus of up to 30%. What this also doesn't tell you is that you also get a damage reduction buff, so you take less damage while Class Warfare is up. People are still struggling with it. This is interesting because unlike contest mode, which is a -20 that most people struggle with, it seems players have more tools to make their experience better here than anywhere else in the game as far as rating, and yet the experience is being talked about like it's contests. So it's going to be really interesting to see how things change as we move to -10, 15, and then contests, which is 20, in the coming weeks. The other side of it is that while this week is only 4 bosses, next week we're going to be adding 5, which is Oryx, then Roke, then Riven, then Nezareth, which will then total to 8 bosses. 8 bosses, while increasing the penalty, will be interesting. My curiosity then comes down to if the surges and singes will change week to week, and if class warfare will always be there or be replaced by something else stronger or weaker. I am hopeful that if they do change the other options, they are equally as good, because this week feels really good, especially for the later, longer boss phases. Even though Pantheon at its core is a welcome inclusion to the game, I do have worries. Like Onslaught, I do worry that Pantheon will be forgotten about. Bungie has a history of creating activities and content that, while at its initial launch sees much praise, but after the shine wears off tends to fade. It also struggles to keep up constant updates and rewards tied to it as the activity gets older. I know it's going away with Final Shape, but I really hope it comes back soon. I'd love to see a mid-season Pantheon drop and tie in more bosses and stuff to it. Keep it fresh, give new players and returning players a reason to dive in. I don't know why they didn't add leaderboards. I don't know why they didn't add any flawless emblems or something like that. Things like this would have improved and will improve the content long term if the activity had long-term investment goals tied to it. On the topic of emblems and rewards, I just don't know how raid exotics should be the only rewards and the main rewards included in this. Including them are great ways for players who don't raid, but I do. When I completed my first clear, I went to the robot and every reward was basically grayed out for me already. I could only claim the cipher and the exotic shard if I deleted ones that I already had. This makes it to where the only reason I'd engage in Pantheon is for one time a week to get the emblem. Now, I do enjoy this activity for the sake of it being a dope activity, so I'm going to do it constantly, especially to help as many people in the community get their completions. But it would be nice if there were some new things to chase for cosmetic wise for me. The emblems are cool, sure, but like mini seals, there's just so many at this point that doesn't truly move me to do an activity anymore. This activity seems way more driven to promote engagement from players who are lapsed trying to play catch up. Every run has a chance of giving you red borders from those raids, and the raid exotic if you're missing it. Get some in-game materials as well so you can stock up before the final shape. And for players who have never done a raid and want to experience the best parts of raiding, which of course are the raid bosses, and also earn some in-game things they've always wanted. If that's the case though, why are they increasing the player cap to making it -5, 10, 15, then 20? I don't really know if a returning player that doesn't raid already is going to want to do some of these raid bosses at contest mode. Especially if they're just trying to get caught up when they haven't played in a while. Now, of course, some will, obviously, but not all, maybe not even the majority. I don't know if they're going to do it for the sake of a few emblems either, because I doubt they're that dedicated to the game to grind for an emblem, especially if it's time limited. Maybe then Pantheon is meant for everyone. The casual occasional raider missing that last red border for their craftable weapon, the semi-hardcore player and raider missing the raid exotic to complete their build, or the top 1% raider who is going to do it just to say they did it and flex their contest mode emblem. Maybe that's what Bungie wanted this to be after all.